It begins in a moment so small it barely registers as a memory. You are in the middle of a sentence, or maybe you are about to start one. The words are there, crowded behind your teeth, pressing forward with urgency, with need. And then something inside you hesitates. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a pause. A slight tightening in the chest. A quiet calculation that happens faster than thought. Is this safe? Will this matter? Will this cost me more than it gives? So you swallow the words back down. You nod instead. You say it's fine, even though nothing about it feels fine. The moment passes. No one notices. And neither do you, not really. It feels ordinary, necessary, like breathing. At the time, you don't call it silence. You call it being easy, being mature, being low maintenance. You tell yourself you're just choosing peace. You don't make a scene. You don't complicate things. You don't burden anyone with feelings they didn't ask for. There is a quiet pride in that restraint, a sense that you are doing something right by not needing too much. And maybe, in that moment, you are. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that talking can hurt. That opening your mouth can change the temperature of a room. That honesty has consequences. That words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. And sometimes they are punished, instead of received. The first time you learned this might not have looked important at all. Maybe you were young, younger than you can clearly remember. And you tried to explain something that felt big inside you. Fear, confusion, loneliness, hurt. You tried to translate it into language. Clumsy and incomplete, and what met you on the other side was impatience, or dismissal, or anger, or silence that felt colder than shouting. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive. Maybe you were ignored. Maybe the person you needed most was overwhelmed by their own pain and simply couldn't make space for yours. In that moment, something subtle shifted. Not a conscious decision, not a vow, just an impression left on soft tissue. This is dangerous territory. From then on, your body remembers before your mind does. It remembers the tightening, the heat, the way your throat closed. It remembers how exposed you felt when you tried to speak and weren't met with care. So the next time something rises inside you, the response comes automatically. You pause. You measure. You edit yourself in real time. You learn to read faces, tones, moods, the emotional weather of a room. You learn when to stay quiet and when to offer just enough to keep things smooth. This is not weakness. This is intelligence. This is adaptation. Silence becomes a skill. You become good at it. You know how to listen, really listen, because listening doesn't put you at risk. You know how to hold space for others, because focusing outward keeps the spotlight off your own inner landscape. You become the one people talk to, the one they confide in, the one who understands, without needing much in return. There is safety in that role. There is purpose. There is belonging. And for a long time, it works. It works because silence once kept you safe. It protected relationships that felt fragile. It prevented conflict that might have led to abandonment. It helped you survive environments where emotions were unpredictable or unwelcome. Your nervous system learned that quiet meant stability, that stillness meant control. So you learned to stay still inside, even when there was movement, even when there was pain. Especially when there was pain. Over time, this adaptation weaves itself into your identity. You don't just stay silent. You become the calm one, the strong one, the one who doesn't make a fuss. People admire this about you. They tell you how grounded you are, how composed, how easy to be around, and part of you believes them. Part of you takes pride in being unshakable. But another part, quieter still, feels unseen even in the praise. Because what they are admiring is not the fullness of you. It is the absence of your needs. The cost of this silence does not arrive all at once. It accumulates slowly, like water seeping into the walls of a house. At first, it's just fatigue. A tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. Then it becomes a dull sense of disconnection, as if you are present in your life but slightly to the side of it. Joy feels muted. Anger feels inaccessible. Even sadness feels distant, like something happening behind glass. You start to wonder if this is just how adulthood feels. If this low-grade numbness is the price of being functional. In relationships, you are careful. You choose your words like fragile objects. You avoid topics that might stir conflict. You tell yourself you are being considerate, but beneath that consideration is fear. Fear that if you speak too honestly, you will be misunderstood. Fear that your needs will be seen as demands. Fear that your truth will be too much. So you compromise preemptively. You adjust yourself before anyone asks you to. You stay quiet and hope the other person will somehow sense what you need without you having to name it. At work, this pattern shows up as competence without visibility. You do what needs to be done, often more than what is required, but you hesitate to advocate for yourself. You don't speak up when something feels wrong. You don't ask for credit. You don't ask for help. You carry the weight silently, and then wonder why you feel invisible, why opportunities pass you by, why resentment simmers beneath your professionalism. You tell yourself it's not worth the trouble, but the trouble is already there, living inside you. Your self-worth becomes quietly conditional. You feel valuable when you are useful, when you are agreeable, when you are needed for what you provide rather than for who you are. You learn to read validation in subtle cues. A relieved sigh, a grateful smile, the absence of conflict. You rarely ask directly for reassurance. You wait for it to be offered spontaneously, and when it isn't, you assume it's because you don't deserve it. This assumption feels logical, even fair, because you have been trained not to expect much. Emotionally, your system stays on alert. Not in a dramatic, anxious way, but in a contained, vigilant way. You scan for shifts. You anticipate reactions. You regulate yourself before anything can escalate. This is the legacy of a nervous system that learned early on that expression equals danger. In psychological terms, this is not a flaw. It is a freeze response softened into politeness. It is an attachment strategy shaped by inconsistency or emotional unavailability. It is your body choosing the least painful option available at the time. And yet, there comes a moment, or several, when the silence starts to feel heavier than the risk of speaking. It might be a night when you are alone and the quiet feels loud. Or a conversation where someone asks how you are, and for a split second, you consider telling the truth before the familiar answer takes over. Or a conflict that leaves you hollow because you said nothing and lost something anyway. These moments don't announce themselves as turning points. They arrive as discomfort, as restlessness, as a sense that something is off. You begin to notice how often you disappear in small ways, how you adjust your tone, your opinions, your desires to fit the moment, how you minimize your reactions, even to yourself. You notice the effort it takes to keep everything inside, the constant self-monitoring, the exhaustion of being your own containment system, and maybe, for the first time, you wonder what it would feel like to let something be heard. Not everything, just something. This is where insight begins to surface, not as theory, but as recognition. You start to see that your silence is not about a lack of words. It is about a history of unmet responses. It is about learning, again and again, that your inner world did not reliably land in safe hands. Your psyche did exactly what it was designed to do. It adapted. It created defenses that allowed you to stay connected, to survive, to belong. But defenses, no matter how elegant, always come with a trade-off. The realization is not dramatic. It does not come with a rush of empowerment. It arrives quietly, almost tenderly. This pattern saved me once, but it is hurting me now. There is grief in that recognition. Grief for the times you needed support and didn't receive it. Grief for the parts of you that learned to go quiet, to keep the peace. Grief for the softness you buried to stay safe. You don't rush past this grief. You let it exist, because it deserves to be acknowledged. You also begin to understand that healing does not mean forcing yourself to speak before you are ready. It does not mean swinging to the opposite extreme, or performing vulnerability on demand. It begins with witnessing, with noticing the urge to go quiet, without shaming it, with recognizing the fear underneath, without trying to eliminate it. You start to name what is happening internally, even if you don't say it out loud to anyone else yet. This naming alone creates a small amount of space. In that space, something subtle shifts. You stop fighting your silence as if it is an enemy. You stop telling yourself you are broken for finding it hard to speak. Instead, you treat this part of you as a younger version that learned a very specific lesson under very real conditions. You offer it curiosity instead of judgment. You ask, gently, what it is afraid of. Often, the answer is not abstract. It is specific and embodied. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen and then left. As you allow this understanding to settle, you may notice moments when the silence loosens its grip, just slightly. You might share one honest sentence where you would have stayed quiet before. You might pause instead of automatically agreeing. You might let someone see a hint of your uncertainty or your need. These moments are not loud. They are not transformative in the way stories often promise. They are tentative, awkward, real. What begins to change is not the world around you, at least not immediately. What changes is your relationship with yourself. You no longer abandon your inner experience the moment it becomes inconvenient. You stay with it. You listen to it the way you have always listened to others. This is integration, though it may not feel like a milestone. It feels more like coming back into your body, inch by inch. You learn that speaking is not an all-or-nothing act. That silence and voice can coexist. That you are allowed to choose when and how you share. That your worth is not measured by how little space you take up. These understandings do not erase the past, and they do not make expression effortless. But they soften the inner rigidity that kept you locked in one mode of being. Toward the end, there is no grand resolution. There is simply a quieter kind of hope. The kind that does not demand change, but allows for it. You realize that you do not have to force yourself to become someone louder, bolder, more expressive to be whole. Wholeness, for you, might look like allowing your voice to exist alongside your silence. Like trusting yourself to know when one is needed more than the other. You end where you began, in a small moment. Someone asks a question. A feeling rises. The familiar pause appears. But this time, there is also awareness. You feel the old instinct to retreat, and you honor it. And then, maybe, you let one honest word slip through. Or maybe you don't. Either way, you are no longer disappearing from yourself. And that, quietly, changes everything.